Hey guys, not the way I wanted to have to do this, but the projector not working. It is what it is. We'll probably go faster this way for you anyway. So let's just kind of get into it. Today we are talking about communication. What and how. First, let's go over your I will, I can statements. Today I will explain the difference between verbal and nonverbal messages and illustrate the flow of the communication process so I can deliver messages with clarity. And that'll all make a lot more sense here in a few minutes. All right, so what is communication? Communication is the exchange of messages. Okay, that's great, but what is a message? Messages are thoughts, ideas, and feelings. But here's the deal. Unless you share those thoughts, ideas, and feelings with one another or somebody else, it's not a message. Because if you keep it to yourself, you're not communicating. Okay? You have to actually send those thoughts, ideas, or feelings out to somebody else. Messages contain information. That's what thoughts, ideas, and feelings are. The way we share messages is called delivery. And there are many different ways that you can send messages. And we're going to talk about that right now. How we send our messages. The way we use our voice and body to communicate with an audience is called delivery. And notice here that I said voice and body. That's important. If messages are what we send, delivery is how we send them. So messages are the what, and delivery is the how. Watch this commercial, and I want you to notice that the exact same words are being used, but the messages are very different.
Call you back. Is this my car?
State Farm knows that for every one of those moments,
This is ridiculous!
there's one of these.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
That's why State Farm is there.
What a day.
With car insurance for when things go wrong,
What a day!
but also here with car loans to help life go right. State Farm.
Okay. So, do you see what I'm saying with that commercial? The exact same words were used by both the man and the girl, but how they delivered their message affected what the message actually was. One person was incredibly happy and excited. The other person was frustrated and angry. But the only thing that changed was the delivery, and that completely changed the message. There are two kinds of messages. They are verbal and nonverbal. Verbal messages, let's take a look at those first. Verbal messages are those that use words. That's the rule. Verbal messages use words. They can be spoken out loud, or they can be written down. It doesn't have anything to do with being able to hear the message that's being sent, because you can't hear writing on a page. It's that words are used, and so that's what makes those messages verbal. Verbal messages are just a collection of sounds. Alphabetical letters are symbols for sounds. When we put all of those letters and symbols together, they form words. And words symbolize thoughts and ideas. We attach meaning to words, which again, just the collection of sounds. We could put them in any sort of random order, and sometimes we do, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like if you're trying to, if you listen to a little baby babbling, like blah 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 blah, that doesn't mean anything. But you're listening to me right now, And what I'm saying right now makes sense to you because we've attached meaning to the words that I'm saying. For instance, this is a picture of something that you should all be very familiar with. And I want you to tell me in your own mind, what is this called? And I'm not trying to trick you. What is this a picture of? It's a tree, right? Well, how do we know that you're talking about a tree if you don't have a word for it or if there's not one nearby for you to point at? Same thing with a desk or a pair of scissors or a light bulb or food. If we didn't have a word, a collection of symbols for those items, for those things, we wouldn't be able to communicate very effectively. We'd have to constantly be pointing at things, but we have language, and that's what we use to communicate. Again, here are the collection of sounds that go into this object. It's a tree. T-r-e. Put all those sounds together, you get tree. Okay. So you start with a symbol, like a letter. That letter has a sound. You put a couple of them together, you get sounds. You get sounds that then form words. Words convey ideas. And then when those ideas are sent out from yourself, that is a message. Okay? Very complicated stuff when you look at it like this, but if you think about it, it's not super complicated because, 2 and 3-year-olds do this. And we're not exactly sure why or how they're able to figure this out so well, because by the time they're old enough to, talk to us, they can't explain it. But, they learn language, they pick it up, and they understand symbols. They start learning their alphabet really, really young, and they understand what things sound like. So symbols, sounds, words, ideas, messages. Okay. Let's move on to nonverbal messages. So verbal messages, we said the rule was they use words. Nonverbal messages, the opposite. Nonverbal messages do not use words. They are unspoken. So you might be wondering, whoa, how does that even work? Well, nonverbal messages are often sent with your body or your face. That's what a nonverbal message usually looks like. But it's not just that, and I'll explain what I mean here in a second. Okay, so for example, your gestures. If you gesture somebody to, hey, come here, probably wave your hand in a motion where you're like pretending to bring something into yourself. That's a gesture. Or if you point in the direction that somebody should be moving, that's a gesture. Facial expressions. You've probably all gotten facial expressions from a happy friend or an unhappy parent. And if you have, you probably understand how powerful facial expressions can be. Eye contact is a form of nonverbal communication. If you are talking to somebody and they're not looking at you or paying attention to you, that gives you some sort of a message, right? It says to you that what you're saying isn't important enough for them to be listening to you or be paying attention to you, or, it's discourteous. And so that can also send a message. Posture. Are you standing upright or sitting upright? Are you slouched back in a more relaxed posture? That can also send a message to somebody. Your physical appearance. And this is why it's not just about face and body, but physical appearance. A guy wearing a business suit sends a different message than a man wearing a construction outfit. So that can also be a type of nonverbal message. All right, so let's check for some understanding. On your sheet, I want you to tell me whether these 3 things are verbal or nonverbal. So is laughter verbal communication or nonverbal communication? Is sign language verbal communication or nonverbal communication? What about emojis? Verbal or nonverbal? answer what you think, and then later on we'll go over those answers. Okay, clarity. Let's talk about clarity. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's how well we send our message. Is it clear or unclear? And I'm sure you've all been sent unclear messages and you've acted on them, and then later on somebody has felt maybe upset or disappointed because the message that was sent wasn't very clear. Clarity refers to how clear a speaker's words or messages are. There are 5 components. The first is pronunciation. This is the production of correct sounds and syllable stresses when speaking. To kind of illustrate that, I have a video clip here from a movie called A View from the Top, and I want you to see what happens when the flight attendant does not use the correct syllable stresses when she speaks.
But we do learn to treat our passengers like royalty. Yeah. So, shall we get started? Go!
Assess the window.
Okay, stop. Stop.
What?
It's assess the window, not asses the window. You put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
And so you can see how not knowing how to correctly pronounce a word can create a little bit of confusion, right? And it can end up being kind of funny, but also can end up causing some problems. So pronunciation is important. Articulation is the process of forming sounds into words. So kind of putting those sounds in the right order, and the order such that somebody else trying to understand you, they would be able to, because you're using the correct sounds to make words. Volume, this is a pretty easy one. Volume is how loud or quiet the sound is. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Enunciation is the process of forming sounds into words that are clear and distinct. So, for instance, you can tell when one word ends and the next word begins. One example I like to use is if you are listening to somebody speak a different language, like Italian or Spanish or German, and you're unfamiliar with that language, you may not know when one of the words they're saying stops and then when the next one begins. Or if somebody is kind of slurring their speech, maybe they're a little bit drowsy or something like that, even if you understand what they're saying, it can be a little bit difficult because maybe they're not enunciating very well. Here is a video of just that. This will kind of really hammer home that idea that some people don't speak in a way that is clear and distinct.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Huh?
Catch me outside. How about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
Okay, so you see she was kind of talking in a way that was very casual. It was difficult to understand, at least at first. So enunciation, the process of forming sounds into words that are clear and distinct. And then finally, we've got rate. Rate is the speed at which you talk. And it's possible to speak too slow, like the sloth in Zootopia. And it is also to talk too fast, like if you've ever heard one of those speed talkers at the end of a radio commercial or a TV commercial where they're reading something like legal stuff. They want to say it really, really fast. Then there's also like the Little Bear porridge, which is just right. It's perfect. It's not too slow. It's not too fast, and you can understand everything that's going on. So rate is also very important, especially for those of you who get up in front of the classroom and maybe you get a little bit nervous. You start talking a lot faster than you normally would. You kind of got to take a deep breath, slow it down, allow your audience to understand what it is that you're saying. Okay. There is a mnemonic device for this. It's called PAVER. Pronunciation, articulation, volume, enunciation, and rate. PAVER. If you can remember that, Hopefully you can remember pronunciation, articulation, volume, enunciation, and rate. Okay, so we got all that. Now we need to look at the sending and receiving process. The sender sends the information. That's pretty easy. Here's another easy one for you. The receiver receives the information. Sender puts it out there, receiver gets it. Okay? Now, effective communication involves something called feedback, which is a return message. In this instance, the receiver, after they've gotten the message, would then turn into the sender and send another message back. It's a very circular process. The means used to send a message is called the channel. What this means is you could be using your voice to send a message. That's a channel. Maybe you get a message from the radio. That's a channel. Maybe a friend or a parent sends you a text message. The phone would be the channel. So channel is what is used to send the message. Delivery is how the message is sent, and messages themselves are, again, information. So in this illustration, who is the sender and who is the receiver? And then that dark arrow up at the top there, Bart is sending what? What is the first thing that you would send? And then Carl gets it. And then Carl sends what back? This is the beginnings of the communication process model. And what would happen is Bart would get a message and then send one back to Carl, who then sends another one back to Bart, who then sends it's an unbroken chain of communication. It keeps going and going and going. Okay? And your assignment is going to be illustrating the flow of the communication process. So what you are going to do now is you are going to illustrate the communication process, and that assignment is on Canvas, ready for you to take a look at. That's what you need to know, but I do have some cool stuff for you. Messages tend to get shorter over time. For instance, word length. Take the word Caesar, for example. Caesar became Kaiser. Kaiser became Czar. So we went from 2 syllables in Caesar to 1 syllable in Czar. And that just kind of shortens the message a little bit, so it takes less time. Contractions, you all know what these are. You take a word like do not, turn it into don't. Again, 2 syllables down to 1 syllable. Our slang, the words that we, or the way that we talk to each other kind of in informal settings. Are you feeling all right? Okay, a lot of syllables there. But in slang, sometimes we just say, you good? So we went from all those syllables to 2 syllables. Again, just shortening the message. And then finally we have emojis. You could say okay 4 button clicks, or you could just send a thumbs up.